Ethereum is making the wrong design decisions from a scalability perspective, and that's going to lead to its losing its dominance to competitors that have a more competitive solution, right? That's the basic argument. So either Ethereum adapts or Ethereum loses, right?
I disagree.
Welcome to ETHDam, where the scaling debate turns into a showdown. Meet Justin, champion of Layer 1, and Toghrul, defender of Layer 2.
Let
the
fight
show begin.
begin.
You guys are awake, running a little behind schedule, but that's fine. So, in my opinion, I'm sure the opinion of many people, the scaling debate is probably the most pivotal idea in all of crypto. If anyone's been here a long time like me, anyone's old like me, the 2017 era resolution of the block size wars, and then now it's coming back in a big way for Bitcoin. Now Ethereum's coming through its own sort of a thing. It really shapes the space, and the giant amount of the industry is based on kind of this. So we figured we might as well have some one of the most outspoken proponents of layer 1 scaling, layer 1 first, actually get a debate. So why don't you guys, really quick, go introduce yourselves and just who you are, what your background is relative to this subject of layer 1 versus layer 2 scaling.
Barely hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go. Do you want to start? Or
We're all friends here. You may hold hands too if you want.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, sure. So I think one of the reasons I was really keen to debate Toghrul in particular is I really respect how you're able to bite the bullet on some of these issues. So maybe it'd be good to we can start off on some of the things we agree on. And I was thinking, I think one thing we agree on is that the majority of L2s are all extremely centralized and come with some very severe trust trade-offs.
I've basically, I'm probably the only person who works for L2s who gets paid to travel around the world and complain about the state of L2s. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons I was very happy to debate Toghrul, because I respect people that can bite the bullet on such hard issues. I think we probably can also agree that from a purely technical perspective, a lot of the critiques that I have, they can be solved from a technical perspective. Do you agree with that as well?
Yeah. I think most of the issues that are currently there can and will be solved. It's just a question of when, purely from a technical perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's where we differ in this discussion, because I think that the problems that we're facing ultimately are not technical problems, but they're social coordination problems. And I think where we differ is you believe these problems can be fixed, and I don't.
Well, we're getting like almost to the end of the debate already. We're getting very far in before
we're getting to the core of it.
Before starting it. So quickly, clearly, because it's easy to say, oh, I'm an L1 guy, I'm an L2 guy, but there's so much nuance. So very clearly, both of you, what exactly are your positions?
I guess I'll start.
Yes.
So roll-up-centric scaling rocks, conventional sharding sucks, Solana-style scaling is okay. It has some problems, but it's much better than conventional sharding.
So my position, to copy some of the language, modular scaling or roll-up-centric roadmap sucks. I did a talk about this yesterday, massive fragmentation, massive trust trade-offs, and I'm an advocate of layer 1 scaling as an alternative. Specifically, sharding is my favorite approach, but I'm not against a parallelized approach like Solana as well. So that's my position. That really gets to the crux of this.
I would just like to add one thing. The conventional sharding, when you say massive fragmentation and trust, you're basically describing conventional sharding because you get fragmentation and you get additional trust assumptions on the edge shards.
Okay, now this is getting... I was wondering where this debate was going to go. And go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, why don't we just get the big core arguments on either side out there one at a time and then go into, well, no, back and forth. You this, and then...
Do you want to start?
Sure. No, I think this is becoming a very productive debate because we're zooming in on the core issues. But I can see, Joel, you'd like us to sketch it out more so that the rest of the audience can
he doesn't
follow.
want everyone else to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Take the audience on a journey. They have to. Not everyone is into these intricacies of issues.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm so skeptical of layer 2 scaling is because I believe it causes fragmentation to the point where you have separate ecosystems. So the future that I see for layer 2 scaling is you'd have a optimism ecosystem over here, an Arbitrum ecosystem over here, and an Ethereum ecosystem over there. And if you notice what I've done here, I don't actually consider Arbitrum users to be Ethereum users. I think they're Arbitrum users in this case. And I think in that sense, a lot of these layer 2 ecosystems are actually competing with the layer 1, actually, over fees, over usage. And obviously, I'm saying all of this with the assumption that we can scale the layer 1, and I think we should loop back to that critique of sharding later on. But I think for me, that is really a non-starter. I think I see it as a dead end. I see it as just an uncompetitive solution. And I also find it extremely antithetical to the entire cypherpunk thesis, because this idea that all of these L2s are going to voluntarily decentralize, I think some of them will, but I think a lot of them won't. And that just comes down to simple incentives. I think Coinbase is a perfect example of that. I love Coinbase as a company, but I don't think they're going to give up that power over that system. They're not going to give up that revenue. They're not going to give up the ability to stop transactions, exactly because of what the panel before was talking about. They want to, I believe they probably will want to have that ability. And I just don't see how we can travel from point A to B, especially in a world where we can build fully scalable layer 1s that still preserve decentralization. Because now you have a single composable state that creates a very powerful ecosystem. That's part of why Ethereum was so successful in the first place. And I would argue that hypothetically, say you have 1,000 TPS, I would rather that 1,000 TPS be on one chain as opposed to that same TPS split across 5 ecosystems.
All right,
2 points here. So one, I agree that certain protocols, certain L2s are not going to decentralize, either because by design they need centralization. So for example, if you want to have off-chain order books like CEX operating as L2s, then you're incentivized to keep the data off-chain, because then you have some plausible privacy in regards to everybody else other than the operator. So I think there are certain reasons, or just purely from regulations perspective, I don't agree that Base is not going to decentralize, purely because I've had too many conversations with OP and Coinbase people. But I also can see your reasoning why they want decentralized, but I don't think that vision can be generalized to every single rollup. That's like saying that all the DApps suck because some of them use multisigs.
No, I'm not saying this applies to all rollups, but I'm saying that this will apply to a sufficient amount of it that this fragmentation issue still remains a real problem. Because the idea, like, you can't have a fully decentralized...
Okay, how many rollups that are currently live can you name that you think won't decentralize?
I would say it's probably like 60% of them, if I were to guess, if I were to project out. I mean, this is very speculative.
Why are you saying that?
There's multiple reasons. I think one is because decentralizing often involves for-profit companies giving up on significant amounts of revenue.
Okay, but there are multiple reasons why that won't be fully the case. So, for example, in Polygon's case, for example, they created a token emission for Pol that allows a Polygon Foundation to accrue a certain percentage of emissions per year. And I think a lot of the L2s are going to follow that approach to like offset the profit loss that they're going to lose from, and not as a company, but as a foundation, to offset the losses that they will take by losing the control over the sequencer.
So let's take Coinbase as an example.
Yeah.
So far, they have a revenue of over $40 million in the base chain.
Yeah.
Right? You're saying they're going to give up that revenue and instead they're going to create a token which they can then make money off?
I'm not talking about Coinbase specifically. I'm
Okay.
talking about, I think you might have an argument with Coinbase and Base. I still disagree with it. I'm not sure like how that's going to play out, because like also from the legal perspective, I don't really see right now how Coinbase can launch a Base token. But I think that only apply out of all the major rollups, And like also because I've had conversations with all of them and like we shared our vision of how we want to decentralize, etc., I can tell you almost with 100% guarantee that everybody else is going to decentralize at some point.
I know, but this seems to be like, this is a promise. This is
It's not a
wishful
promise.
thinking.
There's a
This is-
technical reason why people don't do it right now. There are multiple reasons why people don't do it yet. So one of the reasons is while you control the sequencer, the tech is still immature. So like for example, if you take ZK rollups, for example, how many people can audit a circuit? Not a lot. Maybe like
20,000 in the world, maybe?
No, that's very optimistic. I would say 20, 30. So like,
You're probably right.
if you decentralize a prover right now, what happens if you have a critical bug and someone can basically exploit it and steal the funds? You're screwed. So people don't decentralize. There are multiple reasons, but that can be solved. So like, for example, we just introduced a multi-prover. So we use 2 provers that run in parallel. And basically, if both of them agree on the same, there are different implementations. So one of them is a Halo 2, so a ZK prover, and the other is an SGX prover.
Keep in mind, my argument is not that these systems can't technically decentralize, right?
But then I think your argument is wrong because the only reason why we don't decentralize now is because technically we're still taking a lot of risk by decentralizing.
Do you agree that the only way to solve fragmentation is through a shared sequencer?
No.
How do you achieve fragmentation?
Again, what do you mean by fragmentation? Do you synchronous or real time or asynchronous? Because like I can put the same argument towards sharded chains.
Okay, I mean, you've repeated that for a second time now. I think I should address it. I think what you're saying here is actually false in regards to sharding.
No.
I mean, sharded chains are fully able to maintain composability.
But not real-time composability.
The trade-off is a few second delay
but you can
in
do the same
confirmation
on
times.
rollups. There's nothing preventing you from doing that.
Yeah, but hold on. Like, if a few second delay in confirmation times is the trade-off for sharding, what kind of a trade-off are we dealing with a fragmented L2 ecosystem? Isn't that far worse?
But why are you saying that L2s can't have few seconds of synchronization delay?
No, between layer 2.
Yeah, between layer 2s. Why do you think that they can't have it?
Because you're dealing with different rule sets.
So let's define.
It's irrelevant because the only thing that you need is like a fast messaging layer.
Do you think that it would be ethical for a fully decentralized layer 2 to be seamlessly interoperable with a centralized custodian L2? Would you consider that to be a good practice?
But the thing is...
No, answer the question.
But can you prevent that from happening in a permissionless system?
That's exactly my point. You can't prevent that from happening, and therefore
but what prevents me
fragmentation.
But what prevents me from launching a custodial L2 on a monolithic chain?
Okay, now there's a big difference. If you launch a custodian L2 on a layer 1 that's actually scalable, no one's going to use it. I mean, that's also why if Ethereum scaled tomorrow, all of these layer 2s are going to go out of business.
That's like
right?
saying that nobody's going to use D-apps that have multi-sigs. And then if you look at the majority of the D-apps, they have multi-sigs. That's just not a good argument.
But that's not the goal, right? And
I agree.
Some of the major
I agree with you that
right,
it's
and
not
some of the
goal.
major DeFi blue chips don't have admin keys.
But
right?
then why are you like that argument only works if like the only viable L2 out of all of them are the custodial L2s, but like that's not the case. Like,
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that because of incentives, you're going to have a mixed ecosystem. You're going to have some custodian.
But that can work on L1 as well. You can have a custodian D app into messaging with a
right. But what you're doing by not scaling the layer 1 is you're pushing users into L2s, which can steal user funds, which are often custodian, which can censor. Right. But you also say that a chain like Base probably might not decentralize, right? Because they can't create their own token.
I think there's a plausible argument.
Right. But if they can't create a token, they can't decentralize.
Let's refocus.
They can use
for just a minute,
for example. There are certain ways you can decentralize.
Right. But that's just a subset of Ethereum security in that case.
No, but again, that's only subset when it comes to very, very specific properties, because doesn't matter like what rollups do. A lot of the properties are taken from the L1. So like you're talking about very, very specific subset of properties.
Yeah, like the ability to censor, the ability to steal funds, the ability to deny access.
A rollup can't censor. That's like the most basic feature of a rollup.
Order in the court. Order in the court. We're getting a lot of. First off, we're getting to the point where now we're saying yes, this is good to actually have this debate. There's a couple things that were mentioned. One thing is on, there seems to be this argument on roll-ups and L2s where they, it's a predictive argument, right? Where they will go. I think both of you agree where they are today, which is, or a lot of them, which is not a favorable state.
There's an exception.
Yes, there's exception.
Fuel version 1, it has $8 in it.
So the argument then is that it seems like, Toghrul, you seem to say that over time, that the barrier to decentralizing from a lot of these things tends to be a technical one because
There's only a technical barrier.
because of the risk, where it seems like Justin believes that there's an economic barrier to the opposite, right? And so would you guys quickly drill down, why do you think it's, so Toghrul, why don't you go first? Why do you think it's a purely technical barrier to decentralizing L2s? And what do you think, why don't you think there will be an incentive to stay?
But because even if you put away the fact, for a minute, the profitability, let's say like, yeah, that's an advantage. But also like, for example, Optimism doesn't take the profits. They put it into retroactive funding, and a lot of L2s are going to do that.
I'm sorry, that's a form of taking profit. I mean, they can direct those funding to their own companies.
Yeah, but they're
and
not doing
their
it,
friends
so they're not for profit. Like your whole argument is based that it's a
Wait,
for-profit.
are you saying Optimism is not a for-profit company?
Optimism is not a for-profit company in a sense that it doesn't take sequencer fees.
And you don't think people are making millions of dollars off it?
Who specifically?
I mean, there's
Optimism?
an Optimism token that's worth a lot of money
Yeah,
that
but that's
VCs invested into, right?
But that's a completely different conversation.
Just like how you raised over 80 million for your ICO, right?
We didn't do an ICO, but yeah, we did raise a bit of money.
Right.
Well,
Do you think you would have
hold
made
on.
more money developing the layer 1 or a layer 2?
I think
wait.
a layer 1 would be,
We're still getting out.
at least right now, building a layer 1 would be more profitable.
I mean like working for the foundation or making your own layer 2. What's more profitable, do you think?
Working for a foundation, for Ethereum Foundation.
Seriously, getting a wage is more profitable than getting an 80 million euro
Yeah, but that's like saying,
sale?
why would you build an app that basically raises money? Just build an open source app and launch it. I don't see like why this is an argument.
I'm going to bring it back to the core a little bit here because what you're saying. So the thing is, the only way that I see fragmentation being solved, because this is really the main issue here in terms of the main critique.
Do you want to explain quickly why you think that the economic incentives will always
Sure.
in that way?
Sure.
And maybe, so I'm playing devil's advocate or Toghrul's advocate, whatever in this case.
Appreciate
not a devil,
it.
You're an angel. What if, in a competitive environment, who would want to use a centralized L2? So maybe the L2s say, oh, look, we still get some fees, but if we use a decentralized sequencer, if we do all this kind of stuff, people will switch from, I'm not picking on Base here, right? But switch from things like Base to using a decentralized L2. And so all the L2s might have to decentralize if it's technically feasible, right? Once the technical problems get worked out, they will want to do that to retain their customers. Why wouldn't they? You tell me, why wouldn't they?
So there's a demographic problem here, right? So the people that are fine using centralized layer 2s are using the centralized layer 2s today. And the people that want to be on scalable L1s just move to scalable L1s. And that becomes this reinforcing dynamic in terms of you can never escape that anymore. That's part of crypto demographics. We see that happening a lot. But I would like to bring this back to the fragmentation problem. So I assume you disagree with Justin Drake when he says that a shared sequencer is the only way to solve fragmentation.
Oh, Justin Drake, yeah, I completely disagree with him.
Okay, I respect that. So how do you? So you're familiar with the shared sequencer concept? Yeah,
I had a lot of long chats with Justin about.
I have as well, actually.
The thing is, I think what you're saying, Justin's argument is more about real-time composability versus asynchronous.
Let's define fragmentation, because both of you seem to not like it. But what do you mean?
Justin doesn't disagree that you can have composability between chains that don't have a shared sequencer. His argument is that the only way you can have real-time composability between different L2s is via a shared sequencer, which, yeah, I agree with.
I mean, that's. I mean,
But again,
I mean, you're admitting that you lose real-time composability.
But so do sharded chains.
Absolutely not. That's false.
Yes.
That's a false claim.
Wait,
How much have you investigated sharded systems?
How do they lose
I've
composability?
been working on sharding since like 2016, but okay.
All right, that's fantastic.
And how do they compose in real time? How do two shards that don't have a same that don't have universal ordering.
There's cross-shard communication.
Cross-shard communication
Right.
is not synchronous.
No, it
It's not
adds
real-time.
a few second delay.
Yeah, but that's not real time. Like, that's the point. You can also
a few second delay before
You can also-
confirmation.
but-
That's no different to Ethereum with 12
But you
second
can
block
also
times.
make the same argument for L2s. There's nothing preventing L2s from having a few second delay between communication.
Okay, but here,
Hold
but
on,
here,
hold
but
on a sec.
hold
Can you
but-
explain that a little more?
Because that doesn't
What
make
do you
any
mean?
sense when you say
Why?
that.
Why doesn't it make any sense?
Okay, so you're saying that all of the layer 2s are all just going to agree on the same interoperability protocol.
But you don't have to have the same interoperability protocol.
Then don't you need to go through a bridge? What
Yeah,
do you-
but then yeah.
That's a horrible UX. A bridge is the perfect example of a fragmented ecosystem. Hundreds of millions of euros are being lost by users in bridges. Why are you saying bridges is the solution to an L2 ecosystem? Are you serious?
But because like it's a really bad argument. The only reason why
Why is that a bad argument?
because the only reason why the losses are happening right now is because L2 bridges are sharing the block space completely with everybody else, and so you're essentially like when you're bridging your token, let's say from Scroll to Optimism, you're competing with someone buying a shitcoin on Ethereum.
Do you acknowledge that there's extra steps involved in the UX here? Because you're saying, I have to switch between one L2 to
No,
another.
it's automated.
But hold on, but you even have different tokens that you have like a UST token on Optimism is not the same as a UST token on Arbitrum, right? Like you need to actually figure out what network you're on, what type of token you have.
So
These are all
that only,
extra steps
that only
from a UX
applies to
perspective.
third-party tokens. That argument can be made the same for third-party bridges or any chain. Like that doesn't really apply.
The same argument is made for bridges, but not for like a scalable layer one.
No, because like what Scroll recognizes as a native USDC is the same USDC that Optimism recognizes as the native USDC. The only thing is they live on two different chains.
Okay, but hold on. But do you acknowledge that from a user's perspective, there's several extra clicks, there's
No.
several delays,
No.
there's more knowledge.
There's one delay. That's it.
That's mind-blowing to me because that's not at all the experience of layer 2s, right?
Yeah, but again, we're talking about layer 2 today. Like, I agree with you that the state of layer 2
How do you
today-
solve it? Because I haven't seen a solution.
So there are multiple ways you can solve it. One, you can have storage proofs. That's not an ideal solution, but that's the easiest that you can get fast. And then
But that still requires all of... So see, the problem for me, the biggest problem for me is the coordination problem, right? Because what you're implying
there's
is
no
that all of these
coordination
L2s are going to agree on common protocols.
there's
And these
no-
L2s are competing parties. That's why there's a disincentive
again-
for them to integrate with each other.
But how many times have you been in a chat where multiple L2s are working together on certain standards? I've been in a lot of chats like that. If you think that we don't speak to each other and we don't work on standardization behind the scene, you're very,
It all
very
seems
wrong.
extremely hand-wavy to me. And don't you see the irony?
But because you're not in
Right.
that chat.
Okay, I mean, that's not an argument, right?
Yeah, but also like you're saying it's hand wavy. I'm saying it's not because I'm actually involved in those conversations.
Okay, but basically your argument is, I know it's going to be fixed in the future. I can't tell you how.
No,
What
I
is
can
this?
Hold on,
tell
hold
you
on.
why.
Let's-
No. Wait. I was telling from the perspective, you're saying that there's an incentive not to collaborate. I'm saying that there's an incentive to collaborate. I can tell you how it's going to be solved. My point is that there's an incentive to collaborate because I'm involved in those conversations.
So we just have to trust you then.
So hold on. This is an actual...
I'll post a
thing
screenshot
I
on
predi-
Twitter.
Good thing I
I've seen
created...
some of these same discussions. And you know what I find extremely ironic about these discussions? No, this is one point, and then I'll let you get the thing in. All right? I know the moderator is being... but look, what I find
I don't
very
want him to
ironic, so
bite
some
me.
of these chats where the L2s get together to work in terms of how can we create a composable ecosystem, right? I find it so ironic because you have Ag Layer proposed as a shared interoperability protocol and a shared sequencer. You have the Optimism superchain proposed as a shared sequencer.
Okay, and
you have the
how's the-
base. No, hold on, and then I'll let you make the argument. You have the base sequencer, right? That's also meant to be the shared. You have all these different companies which are all proposing interoperability protocols or a way to fix fragmentation, and they're all competing with each other. I don't see the Ag Layer being surrendered. I don't see the superchain being surrendered. All of these parties are competing with each other, and they charge fees
But
for
again,
these
it's
sequencers.
interoperability within the given ecosystem that has nothing to do with interoperability between those chains. Like you can have Optimism running Superchain, Polygon running Ag Layer, somebody else running whatever, like trust me, Bro Layer, I don't know. and you can still have a standard where you can communicate between them. Those two are
But
completely
what I'm saying is that
orthogonal.
okay, how come everyone hasn't adopted a common layer 1 communication protocol? We have the Cosmos, we have the DOTS, we have a bunch of different standards. How come today, after more than 15 years, we don't have a common interoperability protocol between all layer 1s? Can you answer that question? Why is that the case?
Yeah, but then that's completely irrelevant to L2s.
It is very
now.
relevant because I would say it's the same argument you could apply to layer 2s. How come layer 1s have been unable to agree on common
But
interoperability
then,
protocols?
given ecosystems have standards, IBC works between different L1s.
It doesn't work between all layer 1s. And Cosmos, for instance, is a competing
that's cool.
system.
That's cool, but like I'm not saying that it's
There's
going to
like
work.
20 of these interoperability protocols all
Yeah, but-
competing with each other.
Yeah. So now we simmer down a little bit, a couple big breaths. So there's a common theme after like everything got hashed out to a point of there's a lot of prediction going on. This will happen, that will happen, this won't happen, this won't happen, this will happen. How will this happen? Stomp your foot, whatever. In all this, so first of all, so we're talking about the fragmentation problems of L2s as well as of sharding. That's been brought up, that sharding, because of a several second delay or whatever. So the current state, we're talking about 2024, April, as far as it's still April. What is the state of both of these? So first, what is the state of sharded chains, fully sharded chains? Today, can the user have that lack of fragmentation between shards today in the user experience? If I were to go on my computer right now after this and try something out, can I have that? And what are the user experience frictions I would experience by doing this?
Yeah, so there's several blockchains today that have fully implemented sharding, that have solved this problem of composability. The main trade-off here being a few second delay in confirmation.
And how many is few seconds?
2 or 3 seconds.
One block, basically,
One block? So
Yeah, one
but
block,
it is
yeah.
2 or 3 seconds. You
Yeah.
agree with that thing?
depending on the protocol.
Yeah,
Okay.
which I would argue is equivalent because the layer 1 itself basically acts as the common interoperability protocol. The layer 1 becomes the shelling point that we can all agree around. And when you create a fragmented ecosystem, these fragments can't all agree on the same interoperability protocol. You still haven't answered my question.
Hold on.
in regards to-
Let's not
That's right.
off-road right now. So as far as the fragmentation problem for L2s today, I heard a lot of things, and as I'm not as deep in the space, what is the state today?
So it depends on a specific chain. Like, for example, with ZK chains, I would
Yes.
say the delay is between 30 minutes and an hour. For optimistic, if you go through the native bridge, it's around 7 days?
Yeah, so it's like a 30-minute or whatever,
Yeah.
or several days, depending on
Yeah.
this. And obviously, this is not where we'd like the tech to be.
No.
This is where it is today. And so it seems like the argument seems to be sharding works today. The L2 thing will work someday.
Yeah.
So what is, first of all, what is a likely time frame for this? Obviously, we can't predict. This is tech. Everyone's like, when do you land people on Mars and have a colony, right? No one knows until it happens. But what's a realistic time frame for something like this?
I would say
think?
decentralization for the majority happens in a year and a half max.
Okay, so a year.
And
'Cause-
then fragmentation should be solved by the time we get real-time proofs, which should be 2-3 years from now. Yeah, 2 years.
Okay, so this is so this is where it actually comes to, right? Because debates are, what do they say? Like opinions are like, what, everyone has one, right?
Yeah.
We could talk all days about our opinions, but a lot of this is based on what will or will not happen. So 3 years. And so first of all, I'll ask you first, and then I'll go to Justin with the same question on this. What evidence or what future occurrences would cause you to believe that you were right, or maybe that you were wrong? So is it fair to say that within 3 years, if a lot of this cross-composability issue across L2s and centralization of sequencers, et cetera, if this is solved in the next, let's say, 2-3 years, will you believe you're right? Or is there a different time frame, for example?
No, I think, if it's solved within 2-3 years. Like right now, the main issue that it hinges on is real-time proofs. Like, for example, now you can have composability like theoretically within like 2-3 minutes because the proofs take a bit longer. But like the proofs are speeding up, and like I assuming that the proofs are real-time in like 2 years, which I think they will, 2-3 years, we can have it in like basically the communication can be basically minimized to the same as what sharded chains are.
So what evidence or occurrences would cause you to believe that you were maybe wrong? Or as in today, in your opinions and predictions, what would cause you to believe, yeah, never mind, I think I was wrong on that based on what I've seen today?
So I think the main evidence would be if we don't have it working in 3 years.
In 3 years? So what if it's working in, is it 4 years? Or is it like by 5 years, you're like, okay, I think I'm not
No, I think 5 years, I can almost guarantee that it's going to be there. Not almost, I can guarantee that it's going to be there. 3, I think, is like a very good estimate, but again, like there's a certain probability that it will be delayed a bit because it's Ethereum, and everything is slow in Ethereum.
That takes time. What about 6 years or 7 years?
Like, no. Okay.
At what point?
If it doesn't happen in 5 years, I'm wrong. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. We got that. We got that on paper. Now, what about you? So, what do you? What would cause you? What future evidence would you take to believe that you were right on this point? And then what future evidence would be like, you know what, maybe I wasn't right?
So for me, I think what I would want to see in a layer 2 ecosystem is basically experience, because I believe we can scale the L1, an experience that's 100% equivalent to using a layer 1 blockchain, which means that the layer 2 needs to have 100% equivalent security, UX, trust trade-offs, and then across the entire ecosystem.
For a second, can we stop here? Rollups have better security than conventional sharding, so you've already lost there.
That doesn't make any sense. No, sharding does not sacrifice security.
Sharding does sacrifice
Absolutely
security.
not.
Okay,
with the only exception being DDoS attacks.
No.
Well, hold on.
Wait. You have 1,000 validators running the beacon chain, for example. Let's take a conventional sharded approach where each of the chains get randomly assigned a certain committee, right?
Yeah, correct.
A subcommittee. That subcommittee by default is smaller than the committee of the underlying beacon chain.
But because they're randomly assigned, therefore it has equivalent security.
No, it doesn't. No, that's not how.
So how do you attack a single shard then?
What?
How do you attack a single shard?
It's probability based. I'm not saying you can attack it.
Have you looked at those probability numbers? Are you kidding me?
It's much higher than the L1 probability.
Tiny. It's completely insignificant. Are you kidding me?
It's not.
This is not a sincere argument. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, hold on.
Like that's not how maths work.
No. Like I've seen the maths for this. Are you kidding?
2 minutes left in the entire talk.
Right,
so we're off-roading.
I think there's a really important point I would like to make, because you did not answer my question. You keep steering away from this idea that there's a technical problem to be solved.
Okay.
And I've brought the perfect example, which is the layer 1 ecosystem. How come we don't know? Hold on. How come we don't have a common interoperability protocol between all layer 1s? And I would argue the same thing won't happen between layer 2s for the exact same reason. Can you answer that question? Because if you can't, then you've got a major problem in your argument here.
No, because you're comparing two different things. I can point to Cosmos ecosystem having an interoperability.
The Cosmos ecosystem is not interoperable with the DOT ecosystem, right?
Yes, but you are talking about an Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of Cosmos chains that are completely independent from one another, which is your argument for
L1 system is still fragmented. And by the way, Cosmos has shared security. That's the equivalent of a shared sequencer.
What? Cosmos has shared security now, today?
It depends on the setup of the nodes, right?
No. That's like, I'm sorry, but like,
okay, you know what? I'll concede. I think I might have confused it with DOT, but that's irrelevant to the argument.
But like my argument is that Cosmos has just a bunch of dispersed chains that don't have to adopt that standard, yet they do because it makes sense to communicate.
Yes, and the common standard in Cosmos is the equivalent of a shared sequencer.
No, it's not. What?
At least from
IBC is a messaging protocol. It has nothing to do with
It's a technology that allows for interoperability that needs to be agreed upon by all parties. I would say in that sense,
it's a messaging protocol. It's not technology. It's basically an API.
Message protocol is not technology. I mean, that's just
an
semantics.
API.
Come on.
It's an API. Come on.
It's just semantics at this point. No, but you still didn't answer the question.
Like,
how come we don't have full seamless interoperability between all L1s? How come?
But again, I don't care about
You can't answer that question, can you?
With all respect, Justin, that is a little off topic.
Within an ecosystem.
It's not the topic of L1 interoperability. It's a little bit different. And we're also 14 seconds left. So
It's the same social coordination problem. That was my point.
Let us.
but like,
Hold on, wait.
solved it. So
Audience questions. Save me from this madness. Anyone want to ask a question that I have not already asked at this point? Cage fight next door afterwards.
No, still no.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I'm good.
This
All right.
first question is interesting, right? So, Justin, why do you think there's a higher chance people agree to use one L1 than to use the default cross-chain standard for L2s? And by the way, just as a personal example for this, after Bitcoin kind of did not scale properly for payments, there's so many different payment chains. Obviously, I use some of them. I can't tell you which one's winning out like 7 years later. There is no alt L1 that has done that in the payment chain, in my opinion. So basically, what makes you think that that all users will coalesce around one L1 rather than there will be like, you know, Solana and Ethereum and a bunch of competing L1s, even if they all scale and shard and everything, and that they won't be. It'll end up being like a fragmented L2 ecosystem.
No, I don't think that we'll end up with a single layer one. That's not my perspective at all. I mean, in terms of future, I would probably predict about 5 to 10 dominant layer ones based on engineering trade-offs, ideological trade-offs, maybe geopolitical divides. But like, you're in a competitive environment here. So you have one blockchain where the base layer has high fees, is congested, you're forced to use layer twos, which are fragmented, versus simply
use
just
fragmented L1s.
Versus simply just using a layer one that works, that is fully composable. And that is why Solana today has more TPS than Ethereum and all layer twos combined. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Ethereum is losing?
We're just answering questions right now.
Wait.
We don't have to go back.
What do you think is a fundamental bottleneck of Ethereum?
A fundamental bottleneck of, I mean, it probably would come down to processing, maybe state bloat.
It's state size.
Yeah, well, that's the second thing I said.
State size. No, state bloat is a
bandwidth is a common one as well.
No. Bandwidth is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is state.
It depends who you ask, right? If you ask a Bitcoin maxi, they'll tell you bandwidth is a bottleneck. So.
Yeah, but like
depends how you prioritize.
But also
things.
like Bitcoin is barely useful. So like
we can agree on that.
So like
I think that's a good note to end on because I think some of us want lunch, and I know Justin's going to be on another panel coming up, I believe. So you probably also need to eat lunch. I would love to give a round of applause to our amazing panelists.
Thank you, everyone.
Now, on the way out, hug. Stuff.
Whew, man, is your blood like? I feel like my blood pressure's up. Like I wasn't even involved in this debate. I mean, I guess.
The conversation continues off stage.
Let the fight begin!
You have delayed upgradability, so there's governance for each L2.
I'm not too happy with that situation, right? That an admin key can change the rules and you'll say, it's okay because there's a 1 week delay. Like
you have governance.
I'm not really okay with that.
You have on-chain governance. It's not you have an admin key that upgrades, but you use
what
on-chain.
Do you think, how do you think we achieve better governance? A single L1 with a single governance or 20 L2s, each with their individual governance? Which governance system do you think is going to have higher guarantees in terms of economic security?
But L2s all have L1s underneath. L1s underneath that
right.
Guaranteed.
No. But that's not the argument, right?
Sorry?
They don't govern upgradability.
Yeah.
So you feel pretty confident that in the 3 to 5 years, all the L2s that contain, say, 95% of the TVL of DeFi will migrate to a consistent consensus mechanism that doesn't have admin keys.
But you don't need
therefore give you the equivalent security of the L1.
But you don't need a consensus mechanism for that. Like governance is different.
No, but the thing is, the layer one consensus, the layer one, that to me is the Schelling point. That's why I want to enshrine all of these functions so that
governance is different from consensus.
No, but that solves the coordination problem, right?
Yeah, but coordination again, like define coordination problem. Is it like technical coordination as in ordering, or
For instance, agreeing on a shared sequencer or agreeing on common interoperability protocols between layer 2s. That's the coordination problem.
but then that doesn't impact security though.
I mean,
Not having standardized sequencers, assuming that they're all decentralized, doesn't impact the security.
no, but it impacts censorship resistance,
No,
right?
how?
Sequencers can censor, right?
If you have a decentralized sequencer, you're
Right,
massive.
right. No, not if you have a DC. Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right,
but that's what
yeah.
I mean. If you
Okay.
have a decentralized
So
sequencer.
do you have confidence that, once again, 90% of the TVL in 3 to 5 years will be operating on L2s that have a decentralized sequencer such that they can't censor transactions?
But technically, you don't need to have. So I think for except base, I'm confident that everybody else would have a decentralized sequencer.
So therefore, will base be less than 10% of the TVL?
I don't know.
But
That's a pretty major
that's
problem.
a major problem.
But again, but then you can say like people are gonna just use
now
Binance. Like,
but now that begs the question of: Are you
but
actually
the-
having better security and censorship resistance on the L2s overall? Because you're dependent on so many different L2s. Achieving that level of quote unquote decentralization versus a sharded chain where your security is simply total nodes divided by the actual number of shards, say 4. Right? Because you agree that's the security issue with shards. Is you're dividing by the number of shards.
But then you can also launch an app that is permissionless or on any chain, right? I see an L2 that is as a permissioned app. I see an L2 as like a type of a permissioned app. You can have L2s that are permissionless and completely like decentralized, and you have L2s that are permissioned,
But
and
the
you're
problem,
free to use.
the problem, like,
You have to know
have
which ones to use.
yeah, and to have a single composable ecosystem, you need the vast majority of L2s to all agree to this.
But then the same argument can be applied. Like
No, because with the layer 1,
do you agree
it's
that
all agreed.
the majority of the users are going to come from centralized exchanges going forward?
They will come from
Sure.
centralized exchanges, and
That's
they'll tend to,
onboarding.
and guess what?
Onboarding.
They'll tend to use the centralized chains,
Like base.
like Base,
No, they're just going
like
to do
BNB chain.
USDT on Tron. That's like if you
BNB.
withdraw.
What is this argument right now? I'm not
No,
sure
no,
what
I'm
this.
just saying like because
I've
your
been asking
argument.
the TVL. That's my argument is a question. Is do we think that a vast majority of the usage, which is typically the TVL, is a good metric of that, will be on chains that have achieved this level of censorship resistance and decentralization? And if we don't think that is, and I don't think it is because so many users are coming from the centralized exchanges, which then promote the centralized chains.
Yeah.
I.e., as an example, Coinbase, when you withdraw ETH, by default they withdraw it on Base, for fuck's sake, all right? And now all of these wallets that don't support Base are getting ETH, and their users are bitching like, where's my ETH? It didn't appear. Anyway, that's an aside. Either way, they are putting people on their centralized chains, and so I have low confidence that the ecosystem of L2s in 3 to 5 years will be TVL on the more distributed censorship-resistant decentralized L2s.
This is why UX is so important, because the decentralized community needs to give a better alternative.
It's not yes.
Yeah,
UX.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
It's a
We have,
UX.
yeah, we have to provide a better decentralized alternative. Exactly. In terms of UX.
That's why
UX starts at the protocol
work
though.
together.
But UX starts at the
level.
protocol, but they don't want to work together because they have a financial incentive
No,
not
no,
to.
but like,
Exactly.
but like the question is,
There is the financial, but
if
hopefully there is
your
also a
argument is that
humanistic
like,
incentive. At
but
least.
if your
So here's the
That's
thing.
very
no,
helpful.
but if the argument
Yeah.
is that
And history is not proving that way.
But if the argument is that
Maybe
Coinbase is going to
otherwise.
funnel all their users to Base, and Base is going to be decentralized, right? That's like the.
Sorry,
What?
say that again.
So Coinbase is incentivized to funnel their users to Base. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Right. But then like this argument is like, but Binance is incentivized to funnel their users.
We
to
need to
BSC.
make decentralization desirable, and that's something that people want to use. Otherwise, you're just funneling people to centralized systems.
No, it's
Yeah,
but
they're
desirable.
motivated, but they're not motivated to decentralize the chain.
No, I understand that point, but like,
Yeah.
even if you make the other L2s desirable, like, how does
cannot
that
blame-
prevent
Okay, hear me out.
Coinbase from finding?
No, you don't.
Sorry, no,
make-
no, hold on,
make
hold on,
another
hold on.
L1
What did you-
desire.
what did
That
you
has
say
nothing
there?
to do with Coinbase.
Okay, but then Binance is gonna just funnel all the users to Binance Smart Chain like they're doing now.
Yeah, of
Right,
course
but
they
if all-
do.
But,
Yeah,
if
but-
all the TVL
And
there
we have to
sucks
build
because-
alternatives to that that have
but
good
it's
UX.
great.
the
better.
same argument can be made for L2s. You have a good alternative to Base.
No, because the ecosystem as a whole, right, is not a good UX.
Why?
We just went over this, right?
No, I don't get that part. It's like you can have walled gardens within like one open space. You can have smaller walled
But it's still
gardens.
fragmentation. This is all fragmentation. Fragmentation that's unnecessary in an L1 system, right?
So,
And also, just maybe one point. You understand, my background is from the humanities, so political science. It's a different original background. I mean, I've been doing this for over a decade, but my original background's that, right? So the way I look at this as well, like power corrupts, absolutely. And if you look at systems en masse, what you're saying is that these layer twos that decentralize, they have to surrender their own power in order to do that. That fundamentally goes against like history
What do you
and
mean
political
by
thought.
surrender?
Well, for instance, in the case of Base, they have to surrender their revenue to decentralize. They have to surrender their ability to censor to decentralize. They have to surrender a whole bunch
But
of things.
again, I'm not saying that base is going to decentralize.
It's a case, but it's a case of surrendering
And if-
power,
but
and
I'm
human
not-
beings
But
don't
I'm not
do
saying
that.
that base is going to decentralize. Like, I'm not sure why
Okay,
you're
good.
telling me
So,
this.
all right. So, do you feel confident that they won't?
No, I don't know.
In 3 to 5 years, you had to, are you 51% they will or 51% they
I
won't?
think it's 50-50.
Okay, but
Okay,
say,
so
but
that's a
say,
pretty,
if-
that's a
you
coin
need the walled
toss.
garden, right?
right,
so
right,
it's
no,
a-
but say if Base has 30% of the TVL in 5 years from
But
now.
let's say BSC has 50% of the global TVL.
Hold on. And that means it's fragmented. That means the Ethereum ecosystem is fragmented versus a sharded system that's not fragmented.
But if nobody uses
clearly-
that system overall, there's still fragmentation.
Oh, wait, sorry, that's not an eye. You can't say, oh, but
Wait,
nobody
wait,
uses
no,
it.
no,
That's
no.
not an eye.
If
L1
Binance
fragmenting.
is funneling all the users to BSC,
Okay.
your chain
Of course
can
they'll
be
do
fantastic.
that. But that's my point. Of course they'll do that.
But then, what's the difference between Coinbase funneling users?
Because I want a cryptocurrency to offer a viable, competitive
Solana-
alternative
Solana
to a centralized
is a
system.
centralized exchange,
Yeah.
and it has achieved
I'm
a
with
higher
you there,
amount of
but
volume than
people
all
are
of the
allowed
other
to create a
L2s.
walled garden.
Volume
So,
TVL now.
they should not
A
have-
TVL, no.
Sure, no,
TPS,
not
yes.
true. Yeah.
But
So-
TPS, also bear in mind, the cheaper the chain is, the more spam you get on the chain.
Which is why we want cheap transaction fees so that we get more activity on chain.
Do we
right?
want to? Because
Absolutely we want to.
activity by default doesn't mean good activity. It just
I
means
disagree with you on that. If they pay a fee and it's activity, that's good.
As long as the activity is paying a fee and it's funding the value.
No, but like you can't.
long as you fund
What
the
I'm saying
validators.
is like.
As long as you're making enough money to be able to pay for the protocol,
Then
which
you-
is the same thing as the saying,
But-
like a Costco in the U.S. sells everything super cheap, raises thin margins, really cheap fees, but it makes a boatload of volume.
I think
It's
that's
two different
fine
models.
as long as
Yeah.
you don't say that it's active users, because
I'm
like
not saying
No, I'm not saying that.
the-
No, I'm
the-
not saying
but-
Ethereum clearly has more users right
But
now.
you're making an argument that it's doing more TPS, and
It
the
is.
reason why it's doing more TPS is because it's cheaper, so it's cheaper to spam.
That's why we need
transactions.
cheap fees on the layer one so that we get more transactions.
But
That's
like,
exactly
but
my
like,
point.
what
You're
is your
making my point.
estimate? What is your estimate of how many, what percentage of the transactions on Solana are done by bots versus what percentage of transactions?
I don't care,
cares?
honestly.
It's
But
as long as they're
I'll give you an
paying
estimate. It's probably 90% bots.
As long as they're paying
So
the
what?
fees.
I don't care.
No, but it's.
Do you understand how the stock market works? It's also all bots.
No, but like,
Yeah.
if it's like 3 people, like I can have a.
You know, Ethereum has a major problem because it doesn't have all those bots on the layer one. It's priced them out.
But the bot can also do
No,
voice
but the
transactions.
bots are doing that because they're trying
There's no
to,
such thing as fake
extract
if you're
MEV.
paying
It's
the
not
fee.
like they're doing. The bots are doing. There are bot transactions.
It's legitimate.
Because of MEV.
That's legitimate usage.
Oh no, I'm not saying that it's not legitimate.
Right.
What I'm saying is like if you have a chain that is
If
doing
you're-
1
if you're
million
purely
TPS.
Sorry, so we've got multiple,
Yeah.
one at a time.
If you're purely measuring adoption based on TPS, I'll
We
agree.
need a moderator.
I would agree. I would agree. You don't want to measure adoption purely on TPS.
Oh, I agree with
that's
that.
But
my
that's
argument,
where
that's my
that's
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
agree,
saying.
I
think,
agree,
I think
I
a
agree.
fee collection
Yeah.
is a better metric. So how many millions of dollars in fee collection are you making, and also what's that amount relative to the cost to run the network? So obviously, if you're collecting a huge amount of money, but it costs way more to run the network, like all the total
And it
validator
allows
sets.
VCs to just spam a chain with cheap transactions and then say, oh, look at our adoption.
No,
Yeah, but that only lasts for so long.
That's not the case
No,
in
no,
Solana.
no,
That's like a
never
VC
do that.
just buying, like say you funded Amazon and a bunch of VCs just buying goods on Amazon to show that you have a whole lot of transaction volume. That's only going to last so long.
Yeah.
Right,
That-
you're gonna
that's
run
not
out of
the
money,
case
dude.
in Solana.
I
Just gonna run out of money.
agree
It's
that
mostly arbitrage and meme trading.
I agree the fees are indicative of like usage. I just don't think you can present the TPS argument as an argument for
No,
like
we're not.
adoption.
No, not
No,
wrong.
I wasn't
would
doing
agree.
that.
Yeah,
I actually
okay,
agree
I
with you.
misunderstood.
Alright.
Collection is better.
It's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a metric, but not a great metric.
But I
by
do think it's significant that Solana has exceeded Ethereum TPS because if Ethereum L1 scaled, that TPS would be on Ethereum right now, and that's a loss. That's a loss. You know, that's Solana eating part of Ethereum's lunch. Like the speculative ICO mania that happened in 2017 can't happen on Ethereum now. It's happening on Solana instead.
Looking at sharding
right?
at all? You know,
Huh?
Is
Solana?
looking at sharding.
Totally doesn't like sharding. Totally,
No, they have people building L2s.
Theoretically, I don't think that's true either. But theoretically, I mean,
know
some
teams-
people are building L2s, but the core
'cause you
team is not an
can.
L2
Yes,
core
you can,
team.
but the core team exactly.
Ethereum Foundation is not building an L2 either.
No, but they're encouraging it, and they're changing L1.
And they're
to L2.
refusing to scale the layer one.
But
That's
it's-
an action. That's a conscious action. That's a conscious decision
No,
not
but
to do
they're
that.
actually making changes to L1 to make it easier for
But
L2s.
Ethereum will scale to a certain degree. It just won't scale to the level that you like.
Right, and
Sure.
Solana is a different thing in the sense that they want to scale to that. And anyone's free to build an L2, right? You can't stop.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'm not against
Build.
people building
But the point is,
L2s.
Solana is intentionally competing with that and saying, no, we're going to go as fast as we can
Yeah.
so that the L2 becomes irrelevant.
Yep,
that's
that's
a
it.
difference in mentality.
That's it exactly.
And that's also the difference in mentality for other chains that are doing sharding. It's like, no, you can build an L2, but we're going to make you as irrelevant as possible because we're going to make the L1 as fast as possible,
Yeah.
as cheap as possible.
So then there's very little reason to actually
Yeah.
use an L2 if the L1 is scalable, right?
Yeah, but again,
There's niche use cases, I'll admit, but it's not a replacement, right, for the layer one. That's
Like,
right.
I wouldn't build an L2 on an L1 that is going really cheap and fast and doesn't want me
you
to
still
exist.
need
and doesn't want me
reasons.
to.
There are reasons to build an L2.
Oh, yeah, but sure, but there's
L1.
an order of magnitude lower reasons.
Niche use
As long as they are
cases.
not
It's
enforced.
fine. I'm,
What's that?
Walled gardens have a right to exist.
Yeah,
If
okay.
they, as long as they're not enforced. So if you're forced to live in a walled
Yeah,
garden,
none of this discussion, by the way, I don't think applies. At
Yeah,
least from Justin and I.
it's all voluntary.
No, yeah, exactly. This is
Yeah,
all
yeah.
voluntary. You do whatever you want, right? But part of doing whatever you want is encouraging people in a direction
and it's also
and
like
giving people information that helps drive that decision.
yeah, and my
That's all.
core
That's all this
critique
talk-
here is that
that's all it is.
Ethereum is making the wrong design decisions from a scalability perspective, and that's going to lead to its losing its dominance to competitors that have a more competitive solution. Right? That's the basic argument. So either Ethereum adapts or Ethereum loses. Right?
I disagree.
Clearly.
The only competitor that I can, the only viable competitor that I can see right now is Solana.
That is, I mean, that's a
how did
problematic
Solana
statement.
how did Solana get to its level?
well, fee collection
Where it
wise
is.
maybe.
Like, how did it actually go and successfully become this threat that you deem it to be?
I like
How
the
did it
main
get there?
reason why it got here, like after FTX collapse, because before it was just
It somehow
Sam-
survived FTX collapse.
No,
Pretty
no.
impressive.
No, I agree with that, but like, so Solana can be like split into two phases: one before FTX collapse and one after. After they built a great ecosystem of developers,
Yeah.
and a few cool apps. I think that's the reason why they've been like, because if you look at most
And because of
other-
low fees.
Yeah, I was gonna say if they
And high
built
capacity.
that, if they did that and literally copy pasted ETH, do you
Oh,
think they'd have the
I
same?
think if Solana had the same fees as Ethereum right now, I don't think it would be
Okay,
able to.
Exactly.
so
That's it.
definitely it's scaling help.
Yeah,
It gives
Okay.
a particular competitive
but
advantage.
scaling
right?
alone doesn't. Yeah.
Okay, so now all the other things that Solana did, are those not impossible for a sharding chain to come out and do as well? Like literally, what if you just
Like-
copy pasted Solana, but on the
It's,
under the covers you
it's
didn't play?
possible.
That's fine, I'm not saying
but
it's
I think,
easy.
But I think Solana UX would be better.
Okay,
So like,
That's-
if you're
that's-
trading off the UX, you might as well go
So-
the rollup way, and if you're not trading off the UX, you might as well go the Solana way. Like sharding is in between, where it's like not as good as Solana.
On what
but it's
sense?
also
In what sense
In what
Solana's good?
UX.
Because for my
which UX to a
Why? Why is the
developer
UX different?
to
Because
end
again,
user?
there's
End user?
there's delays, there's etc.
Delay.
Like
That's the only compromise.
for developers as well, they have to like keep track of all the shards.
They don't.
etc.
Nope. No, they
You
don't.
No,
still
that's not
have
true.
to. You have
we
to
don't.
listen to the messages from all the shards.
No, you don't.
As-
I thought you understood
That's
this,
not how
right?
sharding
We
works.
agreed to this.
Yeah.
Sharding is abstracted from the user, including the
Wait,
developer.
And the developer,
If,
yeah.
if you have the interface and
Yeah.
a transaction is initiated from shard 1,
Yeah.
you have to show in an interface that transaction was initiated.
Sure, but the layer one.
so you have
deals
to
with
track all the shards.
Not as a developer.
Not as a developer.
No,
The protocol deals with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as
No,
a
no,
developer.
no. I mean, you don't physically like have to like send the transactions for the protocol. I mean, from the UX perspective. So like, if I open a wallet,
Yeah.
the wallet shows my transaction history, right?
Sure.
Correct.
So it has to track every shard, right?
Not the.
I mean-
wallet doesn't have to go and track every
I
single.
mean, you just have a light wallet that does it, right? I mean,
The light wallet does What do you mean by light
Well,
wallet?
what is it called again? What's SPF, like that type of situation. Like,
Well, like none of the smart contract chains even have SPF. They're simply like an index, an indexer somewhere.
Oh, okay.
So you have a third like off-chain indexer.
Yeah,
And that's actually that's way more lightweight to implement, given that you only have to track the addresses and balances of your specific user base.
on an SPF or a no?
Not SPF. No one SPFs on smart contract chains.
I didn't know
It's
that.
just simply
I
only on
think
UTXOs.
Solana was working on it, but I'm not
No, like
sure.
Solana right now, you just simply like, oh, here's my address. What are my balances?
Yeah, they
Right,
just
and
index everything.
You don't see
No,
any
but-
of its internal shards. You know, no developer will be interfacing with no developer writing a smart contract, and no developer writing like a wallet, and definitely no user will see shards.
No, you won't see physical shards, but you have to track all the shards.
Track shards.
Track the transactions initiated on each shard.
So you're saying only the transactions remain on the
So like
shard,
in
and then
Solana, I
the
just
end
have
result
one
is
chain.
not
I
getting
just track
back to
that
the
chain.
L1?
Sorry?
You're saying that the shards keep the end result and they're not, so the computation happens on the shard, and at the end of the computation, the result is not being promoted back to the main chain?
No. Like if, for example, you
Proof
have
may
a
go to the
wallet,
main chain.
It
Yeah,
shows.
the proof goes to the main chain.
Yeah, the proof goes.
But only the proof, not the state.
Correct.
This-
Yeah, only the proof goes to the.
Why?
The root. You can also publish the root, I
Well,
guess.
it's a lot more efficient. I think the way EGLD works, they just have the shard block headers stored in the main
Yeah,
chain.
so root is also good.
Yeah.
But as a
I
developer,
mean,
I
you
want
can
to
easily just have a query.
premium
It would be trivial
variables.
to have a query node, which when you just simply ask the question, it grabs it from the appropriate shard.
But in the end, that will be
Right.
cheaper.
Yeah.
That would be absolutely trivial,
If
and
you
that
have
could be
millions
part
of
of the
shards, you
L1
cannot
protocol. It's like
aggregate all of them.
every one of the
Do you
nodes
want
for
to
the
have
base.
it on the as part of the L1 protocol? Because that
Why not?
creates additional load on the nodes.
Yeah, but
a million-
if you have a system of a million TPS, the
So?
inefficiency doesn't really matter that much, right? In this case. Also, one argument you didn't make is the inefficiency of cross-shard transactions, right? That adds additional overhead. But I argue if you have 100,000, a million TPS, I'm okay if it's like twice or 3 times less efficient,
No,
right?
I, I don't think it matters at a scale.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think that matters much. Like, I think it's the same way that I'm not sure if you know how Solana is building a light client. So
not, no.
Solana doesn't have a state root. The state root is computed like once every epoch, which is like once every 2 days. So what they do instead is they basically send a transaction that checks the storage of a specific slot at a specific block, and if that transaction succeeds, then they're like, oh yeah, the balance is this. So they basically like have to send transactions because Solana is so cheap, it doesn't matter. The light client can just send those transactions to check the state of a certain balance.
Sure. I mean,
And no, but what I mean, it's
Yeah, it's
wasteful,
so-
but it doesn't waste.
okay,
The
sure.
user, yeah.
Sure. But the transaction fees are so low anyway.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
But wouldn't every shard being able to elect some data to put back to the layer 1 or the main chain, the main state, be cheaper than having a growing list of shards and having a discovery service on top of that? Because obviously that goes out of control
yeah, you're
at some
right.
point.
No, but there's that's where the bottleneck lies, is the number of shards. Because then
But you
the
can solve that if you don't have to discover the shards anymore.
not
Ignore
sure.
their state and elect state that you can put
wait,
back to the layer 1.
you publish all the transaction data on the L1?
Not all. So as a developer, you should elect some data, like the minified version of everything that happens. So this part doesn't have to go back. Only this part goes back,
guess.
and you pay for
but
it.
then you're increasing the bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
You do that. That's probably not worth it in terms of the trade-off.
I think in the end it might be actually cheaper than discovering a million shards.
Well,
No,
I don't
you
think
can't
you
have
need a billion
shards.
shards.
You can't do that. That's-
Exactly.
No, but because
one
I
thing
say
is-
because I
one
say
thing, the
because I
scalability stops there, but here the scalability might.
no, but
continue.
I'm saying 1,000 shards. That's feasible, right? Each shard maybe does a few thousand TPS, right? That's how I'm getting some of these numbers, right?
Okay.
But like if you go beyond that, then the beacon chain. That's the bottleneck.
But that's just how they
Yeah.
are implemented at this time, right?
Huh?
That's just how they are technically implemented at this time. But there can be like, you can have a million ways of sharding.
Sounds like you got some ideas to start your own layer 1.
I mean,
we
there's
are
a million
talking
ways to
about
shard,
this
but you don't want a
specifically
million
developed
shards.
software.
Huh?
I think we are talking about the mechanics of already specifically developed software.
Sure.
Well, actually, we should think about how can we solve this problem in a generic way. And
I don't really
of
think-
course, probably you're not going to compete with Ethereum, so you have to.
It's not. No,
roll
I think
over
we are
and,
all.
and keep
no,
your to
you
what
are.
they
What's competing
develop.
with
No,
Ethereum?
you are competing with Ethereum.
At that point, or you convince
All layer
Ethereum
ones
like,
compete
hey,
with Ethereum.
this is better if you have a good proposition, or you can hope to maybe convince
That's
them
been
with
the
a better
hope
idea.
for a while, but
And then they
they've
might
kind of given
adopt
up.
that.
I disagree. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like, for
maybe if
example,
the leadership
scaling
changes,
layer one
maybe.
instead of
there needs to be like the community needs to overthrow the leadership in order for sharding to be implemented.
Right.
A lot like what happened during the block size debates, which I was a part of.
Don't you
right?
think that they would listen to reason if you really offer a better alternative?
I've been
there's-
talking with Justin Drake behind the scenes through DMs, and I respect the guy, but he disagrees with me, so I can't convince him.
He has his mindset.
Yeah,
That's,
There's potentially also economic incentive.
that too. Yeah, and that's the strongest thing here, if anything.
Yeah.
which is like
There's a lot of money going into
what
L2.
makes the world go around.
Billions of dollars worth of
Exactly.
L2
Yeah.
funding and only a few million for L1 funding.
Yeah.
Probably not even that.
Okay, but then I have to adjust
Monad
my
just collected 250
not
million.
non-finance.
Monad just collected.
No, I said for Ethereum L1 scaling. The foundation is not giving money to develop L1 scaling, right?
Yeah, but because the assumption is that the L2s are
Right.
going to scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why there's billions of dollars of incentive
Yeah,
for
which
layer
is
2
not necessarily
scaling
correct
and no
assumption.
incentive for layer 1 scaling. That's perverse, in my view.
Ethereum has money. They're like,
You're just
it's
not spending it on layer 1
Yeah,
scaling.
so it's not an incentive problem. It has that money.
Well, it's an
It-
incentive.
That
I
is
think-
an
They
incentive.
I think
just
Justin
chose-
asked you the question earlier. Would you rather get a salary from the Ethereum Foundation, a fair but annual salary with no token incentives that could moonshot, or work for an L2 where you have a token
Or I
incentive?
can
that
work
could
for another L1. Same
That's my
thing,
point.
yeah,
What-
yeah,
what-
yeah.
what-
But the thing is,
you've
L1s
chosen though.
the thing is
You've made your
L1s
choice.
Real
No, I
L1s.
made a choice because I like the roll-ups.
Real
and then we
L1s
could
are like
produce
public
products.
goods, right? Most L2s are like built by for-profit companies. There's a big
L2s are
difference.
startups, L1s are now-
L2s. You can rent seek the L2.
Well-
you can't rent seek an L1.
And you could just say ETH L1 because obviously the new L1s are basically kind of like L2s, the newer ones. But
Yeah, sure.
but ETH is an L1, which is an established multi-year long existing L1, has just like startups, right? Like once a company goes public or
Yeah.
many years in, there's less to gain from someone joining that company versus joining an early startup with early options. Exactly the same model,
Yeah.
right? And with Ethereum as a long-standing company per se, right? The foundation doesn't actually, and ironic, the foundation doesn't make a lot of money the way a real blue chip company would. It doesn't have the kind of reward incentive to be able to compensate new developers to build sharding
Yeah.
or to build any kind of scaling. And so they can just kind of ride on their laurels, don't spend any money that the foundation already has, throw parties, events, and maybe, which I'm not sure of, I don't think it's publicly known, maybe have some kind of incentive with an L2 that, is able to drive investment because it now has a potential
Ethereum
token that it
Foundation
can
was
spin off.
sitting on like $500 million at some point. Like
It's-
I think it's a bit less now,
I think it's like 300 million or
but
something.
they have more than enough money
Well, they
to
have plenty of money.
incentivize people to build.
but
So I
they're
don't
not
think,
spending it on that.
but
That's
because
the
the
point.
decision was made
And that's
that
the
L2
foundation's money. It's not a private company's money. It's a big difference between a foundation and a private company.
But the foundation is still spending that money on developing the protocol and why or another,
But
right?
during the debate, you said you would rather get a wage from the foundation than make millions of dollars from your own L2. That's what you said on stage, right?
No.
remember.
I don't think I said that.
Oh, okay. Then I misunderstood
No.
you.
I'm,
okay.
no,
Sorry.
I think it's
Yeah.
just a weird argument. Is like, my decision wasn't because I'm being paid more. Also, Ethereum right now, like if you exclude the tokens, it doesn't pay bad. The pay is quite well in
It's just
Ethereum
a
now.
wage, though. That can't compare to like
No, no.
token
Well, it depends.
distribution.
A wage can be pretty big.
It
I mean,
depends-
even a big wage.
It
it's not
depends
the
on
same.
when you
You're
join.
still a wage slave.
It
you know what
depends
I'm
on
saying?
when you join, though.
I don't know. I mean, at some point a wage can be equal to the payout, right? It's
Yeah.
It's a gray scale.
It also
There's
depends
some insane
on.
wages out there.
Also,
It's not going to be $1 billion.
but then your argument,
A billion, but I mean, most of the L2s
but then the
don't get a billion
argument is
either.
that like, the same is going to apply to L2s right now because like if you join Arbitrum, for example, Arbitrum already has a token, so there's no incentive for you to join Arbitrum and build on Arbitrum now.
Sure, that's why they're just launching new L2s so they can capitalize on those.
Arbitrum isn't
the
launching.
VC pump and dump, you know?
But Arbitrum isn't launching their own L2s.
No, I'm saying new L2s are being created constantly because those can be monetized.
But
right?
new copy-paste Uniswaps can be also created. Like new copy-paste meme coins are created. Like, I don't think that's a good argument. Like
Preferably on a new L2, right?
like it doesn't mean. Yeah, that doesn't mean that like every single L2 was created for that reason.
Sure, no, I'm not saying.
You can't say none of them were created.
I mean, I can't.
Oh
know
no, I'm
what's
not
in another
disagreeing.
person's
Like
mind, you know?
some are definitely created for that reason. I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is like just because like some are created for that reason doesn't mean that every single one was
Sure,
created.
but what I'm pointing out here is a massive misalignment of incentives to go L2 scaling and not to scale the L1. Because if the L1 scaled, all the L2 businesses go out of business, right? Like
Would you
that's
disagree
a
with that?
massive perverted incentive.
If Ethereum implemented sharding like say EGLD,
Yeah.
was able to achieve 100,000 transactions
Yeah.
per second,
Where does that
what
leave
would
the
happen to
L2s?
your L2?
Basically,
Between two untrusted parties. Between two untrusted parties. Because they're arbitrary nodes. Like you can be running a node, I don't know who you are, I'm running a node.
Okay, but hold on. But every blockchain needs to synchronize node between
No,
untrusted
but
parties.
within one consensus. So like in
yeah.
Solana or Monad, for example, it's within one consensus. Whereas in a Sharding chain, you have two consensus within the shard, and like one consensus has to.
I have to trust
honestly
you when I
fair.
grab the data.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, there's different kind. I mean, it's shards because the shard has its own consensus, but then there's like the consensus above it, the entire system.
Before
But
I can even process a transaction, I have to trust the data that I get from the different shards
share it
to be
somewhere,
real.
please do.
Sorry, say it again.
Before I can
if you're
actually
going to
process a
publish it somewhere,
transaction.
please share it.
Yeah.
If I have to grab the data from different shards, then I have to trust that data is correct.
That's what introduced the few seconds delay.
Correct, exactly.
Would
So
you like
that's
to share
the
it with
piece
me?
that's significantly different than parallelization on the same computer.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's why I think that like if you're going monolithic, you might as well go Solana or Monad style.
Well, the issue I have with that, because I would prefer not to make that trade-off of speed. My concern with Solana is that the upper bound is still too low. That's why I prefer sharding. So what I think Solana actually does in terms of its design, it trades speed for capacity, at least compared to a sharded system. And I'm not convinced that even Solana has enough TPS to be long-term
Solana's
competitive.
theoretical TPS with, and also the nodes will just have to be gigantic. So it's also trading off some level of
It's probably
decentralization.
1 to 2K TPS max, if you exclude consensus transactions and all that
No,
stuff.
it's more. It's more.
Think
It can do. I think their peak was like 5.
No, but
Excluding votes. Excluding votes.
But that's
yeah.
not a testnet then. Or,
No, mainnet. At some point, they were peaking at 5.
So what was it when they started breaking down?
That's not the figures I've looked at actually. I've spent some time
They
on
had
this.
they had a peak of like 4 or 5K.
Okay, when was this? This is not now, right?
No.
Yeah, okay.
What was the
cool.
bottleneck?
Oh, now the reason why it's breaking down is. Oh no.
At 4 or 5K.
There are multiple bottlenecks there. I think their main bottleneck is the scheduler. The scheduler is not very well implemented, and so.
So it was a CPU bottleneck?
Yeah.
And a RAM bottleneck.
It's a VM scheduler, so like it's
The RAM is a pretty severe
the algorithm.
bottleneck as well.
From what I
Yeah.
understood from talking to like fire dancer people, the scheduler is not very optimized, and so.
I'm a little bit skeptical from the claims coming out of Fire Dancer, though, if I'm being honest.
But the thing is, there are two claims. One being made by the Fire Dancer tech team, which is more realistic.
Yes.
And then
yes,
the other.
because I talked to the tech team, which was very different from what I heard from the marketing.
Richard, who's like their main tech guy, is like super unhappy with like the numbers that they.
Right.
Yeah. It's still impressive, and I think it's like a marvel of engineering.
I agree with you on that.
I think.
But I think it might still take a few years before it's done.
Yeah, but also like think of it this way: if they can reach like 20,000 TPS, that's more than enough for now.
I don't disagree. I'm skeptical it will reach those figures.
I don't know if that's. I think it's more than enough as a payment network. It may not be enough with DeFi.
Well, the thing is, keep in mind, Solana will scale as hardware improves as well.
At the current level of adoption, I think.
I mean, like hardware keeps getting better.
I was about to say. So we also have Moore's law.
Yeah.
That depends on what their bottleneck is.
So for me, when I look at Ethereum, sort of with my investment eyes, I'm thinking, okay, will it be able to meet demand before demand flows to an even more scalable chain before hardware improves so much that it can actually meet that? So that's kind of the calculation I'm doing.
And that's the challenge, that which hardware is it bottlenecked by? There's certain pieces of compute systems that don't go by Moore's law.
Yeah, sure.
So
I think RAM
CPU generally does, but you don't.
No.
CPU per core is not.
Not anymore.
But parallelization is still pretty good.
For now it's CPU because
but CPU single core is not is not keeping up with Moore's law anymore. Like a single
Well, that's why we need parallelization, right?
Right. But RAM is also not.
Right, yeah, and RAM is a major bottleneck due to Solana's design as well. Like that's a lot of the expense for a node is going into the RAM because they're storing all that stuff on that.
On top of Solana.
So that then you have to kind of ask yourself like, what actually is
kind of way, or done better,
if that's a
but not like Ethereum.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. 1 to 2K.
Is it the RAM size, the RAM speed?
Huh? I don't know about this 5K now, but I'm not actually familiar with that.
Oh yeah, they have this like weird.
I haven't seen that. Sorry, you're asking.
Is it the RAM speed?
Code and then like
RAM
states
RAM
which are
size.
different things, etc. Like it's
I think
a
128
bit
gigs.
interesting.
No more, 256 gigs.
Yeah, would that be
It's expensive. RAM's expensive. and you
That
get
it's hacked on
I think I don't know.
maybe even an advantage.
Certain things they've done well. So for example, they have like the the token standards baked into the protocol, so you don't have to
Coffee is a
have
great
like 20 million different ERC20 contracts. It's baked into the protocol, so you just inherit the standard contract.
Yeah.
And then like you have the same. You are compliant with the standard. So now because now, for example, the problem is you can be compliant with the ERC20 interface, but that doesn't mean that you're compliant with the standard itself. So, like for example, Tether is not compliant with the ERC20 standard. They
Correct.
don't.
They don't give callback, right?
They don't return the false or true.
Yeah.
During the execution.
Sorry, which standard?
ERC20.
You mean Tether?
Yeah.
It's not compliant.
Yeah.
Really?
That's why everybody has to do hacks in their smart contracts to basically support that. And they also don't have 18 decimals, they have 6 decimals, so you have to have decimal recalculation if you support multiple of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, you can deal with it, but it's not ideal. But it was not your point. Your point is you can implement it without, or you can support it without fully implementing it correctly, or you can just keep to the interface. But have a crappy implementation.
Yeah. So basically, it's a standard that you just inherit,
Yeah.
so you don't have to redeploy it. I think that's like smart. But yeah,
Interesting to see how it will go. I think they kind of proved themselves already that they will be around for a while longer.
no,
I
they'll
think it's safe
definitely.
to say that.
I think that Solana is going to be the main Ethereum competitor long term. Maybe Monad.
You know what I feel missing with Solana?
Yeah.
It's like this cypherpunk ethos where we're making a better world, which is weird with all the meme coins and the bullshit on top. But at the same time, that's what attracted me to Ethereum in 2015. All these single-purpose blockchains, suddenly Ethereum, hey, programmable, cool, let's do that. And
took an insane amount of money from Solana.
I see it also like what happens now to the world with tech giants dominating centralization. It's going in a direction where it ends up like a really bad science fiction, 80s science fiction movie with exploding neck bracelets. The vector we're on, right? And the only thing that can somehow reincarnate human values, humanism, and democracy into the digital age is this, the cypherpunk ethos community. And this is what I find so attractive at Ethereum. But at the same time, that might just be an act or a good marketing for which I fell. But I really still hope that something of that remains true and that we will have the alternative. Because the tech giant alternative is not going to end up very nicely according to my personal preference at least.
I think like Solana gets criticized for the same thing Bitcoin Max is criticized Ethereum is like moving too fast and like changing things too fast, which I think like you can do that early on where you don't have like hundreds of billions of dollars sitting on your
If
chain.
they're still in the luxury of doing that, then they should.
100%. I think like Ethereum is just at a point where you cannot do that anymore because like if something gets screwed, that's it.
This is what an auditor guy said to me. Why they're not scaling L1? I mean, I get scared if I deploy a smart contract with maybe
I
a couple
think
of million
that's
CPL, right?
there are a few reasons, and I think that's a big reason. Is
I would
because
be that
like
scared.
with L2s, you're separating the failure to like different chains. So let's say like if one chain fails, only a portion of the funds get locked, not everything, unless there's like one dominant chain.
That's actually a good aspect of the gardens.
Yes, so it's essentially like this like separated system within this one system secured by Ethereum underneath, where like if one thing fails, you still have like the other things working.
This is fragmentation as a feature.
I had a talk about it. I had it a year ago. I don't remember which conference. I basically said like there are disadvantages to it, but also advantages to it. It's the same with like, do you make your smart contract immutable or do you make it upgradable? Because both are security precautions.
Yeah.
You make immutable so if you get like your keys stolen, for example, so nobody can steal your funds.
Yeah.
And you make it upgradable in case you find a bug so you can protect it as well. So both of them are like basically different sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Oh, true. It's really difficult. You have disaster recovery when you make them upgradable. You have a disaster recovery method. I actually advised one or two like top 500 projects that got hacked.
Yeah.
And then because they were upgradable, there was like this whole on-chain analysis thing that could be done, and then like re-establishing the state and all. Like horrible, but still it worked. And you cannot do that if there is an exploit in a fully decentralized smart contract. It's just all game over.
So it's like it's the same thing basically. It's like the same the same like coin, just different side.
I'm happy to make introductions to the actual.
Yeah, I've got like a proper computer.
So you are with Scroll, right? Or
Yeah.
actually, you lead that thing.
If I had to choose.
No, I'm a researcher there.
Researcher, okay. Because you said like, hey, these they are working together. And then we had a discussion in the crowd, like, to what level? Because you can have lunch once a month.
No,
and call that working together,
like,
or you can like very tightly integrate.
There are a few Telegram groups where like we chat regularly, and also certain things are like more slowly happening, and certain things are like, for example, like we adopted recently, like a lot of EVM chains adopted the new standard for a new precompile that like EVM on L1 doesn't have, but L2 EVMs will have, which is for a new elliptic curve.
So the reason why I was saying this was because I think maybe
So we actually have to find out, we have to ask the
voluntarily working together. If everybody has their own incentives, you only do it if you have time left. But if you have to meet your own deadlines, and maybe there are some individuals that are exceptionally proactive that also do it and make time for it. However, if you look at what makes blockchain work or DeFi work, it's that everybody's also financially incentivized to do it, which is they have to almost gamify it.
Yeah.
Right? Why do miners work? Because they get rewarded for it. It's the whole consensus mechanism.
Yeah.
So actually, if we really want L2s to work together as by default, they should be incentivized to do that. And the only place that can come from is maybe the L1 or something that sits in between, maybe like a shared sequencer.
But the incentives are already there for certain things. So for example, like we all have this problem of having to basically retrofit the economics model of L2 into an L1 transaction type, which results in horrible UX, like right now. And so we're all incentivized to work together to propose a new transaction type specifically for L2s to like basically avoid that from happening, because all of the like Arbitrum, us, Polygon doesn't like even, they just pay it from themselves. They just charge a premium and then like deal it internally. But like us, Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync to a smaller degree, but still, like we have this problem of like having to retrofit the existing economics model that L2s have into an L1 transaction type, which doesn't allow for it. So like you have to do hacky things. And so that's one example. There are also like a few others that like we've been discussing. So one of the things that is coming from L1, Justin Drake is pushing a lot, is like shared sequencing and base shared sequencing. So that is also like, but there's also like a weekly call between all the L2 developers discussing like different features and stuff that we want to like propose as a standard or something like that.
That makes me a little bit more hopeful to know that, so thank you for that.
It just started like a couple of months ago.
Look into it, Paul, because man, it's really a pain in the ass. I looked into it, it was on a subchain. And then I started looking, well, what do we have to do to integrate a subchain? Like, oh, well, like, forget this. This is
Yeah.
a big mess. Like, this is another form of L2 or Cosmos.
And then that's why I ended up rejecting Avalanche, Polkadot, because it's that modular design, which is a step beyond what Ethereum has in terms of its L2 scaling. Like, to me, it's still not good enough.
But
Cosmos still sucks. Multiple chains on Cosmos.
No, I'm good.
Polygon
Thank you.
still sucks.
But Avalanche is not really
The guy that
modular, is
implemented
it?
all of them and makes money on them.
It's kind of a mixed bag because they have the C chain. I mean, nothing is purely modular, right?
I need to switch sides and I realized that, you know, from a business point of view, we make money when people have to swap between these shitty chains, you know, and L2. You know? So, all right, L2s, baby. All right, more power. Bridge to hell. All right.
That's funny. So, what was your question? Avalanche. Something.
Yeah, Avalanche just have like it's like a bunch of monolithic chains essentially. Like
I don't.
But you said every validator has to validate each chain.
Well, like, so the C chain, you could say, is a monolithic chain, but they're not really.
So,
then they're not scaling it.
Oh,
so
C chain, you mean the primary network, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the one with the smart contracts.
Now
So
primary.
And then you
it's they have 3 chains in it.
So C chain
Chains,
is
X chain, and P chain.
Yeah, P chain's for staking.
X chain is for exchange, which nobody uses.
Exchange like
No.
a DAG that no one uses.
Yeah.
Wait, exchange? No, exchange is just simply a UTXO chain like Bitcoin.
No, it's a DAG. Exchange a DAG.
But
It's a DAG, yeah.
But it's a UTXO architecture. I don't know how it works underneath the cover.
I didn't.
Oh, I don't know whether it's UTXO. So yeah, I just
Yeah.
yeah, it's a DAG, yeah.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
Okay.
But I would view like I have put Avalanche in the category of a modular scaling roadmap because they don't have plans to scale the C chain more and their primary scaling
they
is
are.
subchains.
They re-engineered the underlying coin base completely. They wrote the new database, etc. And according to them, the new upgrade is gonna like be much faster in terms of get that they were using before.
How much faster?
I don't know the
Is
numbers.
it parallelization that they're doing?
No. They just hyper optimized the
Ah, but
database.
that can only go so far. That's like optimizing ETH without parallelization.
But the thing is, if you like Monad claims, I don't know how true it
How much
is.
you can do in one.
Yeah, they claim 10K.
10K. I don't
I'm
know
doubtful
how
of
much.
that number as
Yeah,
well.
I don't know how much, but like I can see how they can like achieve 2-3K.
Yes, agreed. No, like 2-3K seems to
And
be
that's
the upper bound.
purely and the thing is, even if they didn't do block STM, they could still achieve that purely by re-engineering the underlying database of Ethereum.
Possibly.
So like the reason why Ethereum like cannot do that
Interesting.
is because like if you do that and you allow more transactions to go through, then the state is going to grow large. So now you cannot verify it on live machines. So that's why Ethereum doesn't do it. But like if Ethereum like drops it and for example says that
What are your thoughts on pruning? I mean, most full nodes prune, right?
state pruning versus data pruning is different. So you can prune transaction data, but the problem
Right.
is the state. You have to store the entire state.
Right.
So that.
But you don't need the state history. You just need the current state.
But the current
that's
state is
okay.
large, though. Yeah.
That's fair.
So that can be solved to a certain degree by Verkle trees, which are expected to come in the next upgrade, I think, because then you can have stateless clients.
And then you can reconstruct the data from the Verkle tree, right? Is that how that
No.
works?
So with stateless, like the problem now is like, for example, assume this way: like you have a builder
Yeah.
that constructs or all the block and then sends it to all the validators, right?
Is this related to PBS? A little bit? Or?
You can connect it.
Yeah,
It can be separated, but like
Yeah.
let's because
Got it.
it makes more sense with MPBS.
Yeah.
So you have this builder with like massive
I
hardware.
have mixed feelings about this stuff. I'm curious. I can continue.
So like
Yeah.
you have this one builder with luxury, massive hardware that can do whatever, like whatever
Yeah.
computation you need. So, and every other node just tracks the header
Yeah.
and tracks the state root. So what they do is they
No pressure.
they when the builder constructs the block, they include all the paths to all the openings of the Merkle tree that are read or written to by the transactions within the block. So all the Merkle tree openings, and then propagates that with the block.
Okay.
And that way, any node that has the root of the previous root can basically re-execute all the transactions without storing state.
Without storing state?
Yeah, it's completely trustless because you have all the openings that you need. So you don't need anything else.
So don't you have to know the state?
You have to know the state root because you have the openings attached to the block. So you just need to check whether the openings are correct. And then if any transaction in the block tries to touch an opening that you don't have, then you just reject that block. It's assumed to be an invalid block. And so that way you can have really light nodes.
I have some concern around the. I always get builders and proposers mixed up.
PBS,
I think it should be the reverse of what it's named now, but whatever. That's another point.
So it's viewed from the perspective of the consensus.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, I think it's the builders that will have the really high nodes in PBS, right? So I'm a bit concerned about that.
Why?
Well, I mean, now you only have a few builders of very high node requirements.
If you combine it with inclusion lists, which are also probably going to come in the next upgrade.
Yeah.
This is all Avalanche we're talking about still?
Oh, no, this is Ethereum.
Yeah. So if you combine it with inclusion lists, now you have a situation where essentially, let's say I'm a leader for a given round in Ethereum.
Right. Yeah.
I propose a block.
Yeah.
And then I include a certain set of transactions that I want to be included within the next block.
Mm-hmm.
Within the next block?
Yes. And then the next builder either can include that or can skip that. So if it's basically like a censorship resistance property that
I agree
to
on that.
Enforce it.
Yeah, I agree.
So this is expected to come in the next upgrade as well.
Yeah.
I think the EIP was already written.
Yeah, I'm on the fence on it just because it just seems scary.
Without that, I agree.
Yeah.
With this, I think the properties are relatively safe, and also I just think like every single chain at some point is gonna have PBS.
Well, it does seem like a bit of a natural evolution because what we saw from from Bitcoin to now, it's like what we've done with nodes is we've just separated functions more and more into separate areas.
But it just makes sense because
it seems like a continuation of that.
But it just makes sense. Like, if somebody can find a more optimal ordering than me and make me more money, why would I do it myself? I'll just outsource it.
What's a more optimal ordering? Just
in
as
terms
far
of
as
value extracted.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What do you think of? What do you think of randomizing transaction ordering to deal with MEV?
My worry with that, I think it improves to a certain degree. It decreases the MEV, but like it doesn't solve it fully, and it also
probably won't work on Ethereum due to lack of capacity. Because it makes it easier to spam.
But that's not even the main problem.
All right.
My worry with it is like it incentivizes censorship. Because now as a builder, I'm incentivized to drop transactions and include mine. And also, on top of that, I'm incentivized to like, depending on how...
well, the way this would be randomized is that it would be randomized on the protocol level. So basically, you don't get to decide on the transaction ordering yourself anymore.
Not the ordering, you can't enforce the transaction.
No,
choice.
You can enforce ordering, so I exclude certain transactions from my order. So let's say I see you're doing an arbitrage, for example. I'm the leader.
Yeah.
I see your arbitrage. I'm like, I'll drop it. I'll put mine instead.
That's fair.
And even if it's reordered, I still know that I'm gonna succeed now. And so I'm not sure if it's a big problem.
Yeah.
But like.
There's an improvement there.
It might be a slight improvement in the sense that you can't reorder a transaction.
It also like incentivizes spam.
Yeah, that's the flip side of it.
Because like now I'm incentivized to like, if the chain is cheap, I can send like 20 transactions and hope that my MEV transaction after randomization lands first.
That's true.
So like...
You mean 20 instances of the same ARB transaction?
You mean like double spins or...
No, not double spends.
Oh, but then if all the transactions are included, that's good for the blockchain?
No, there's no
that's good for the blockchain, but that...
Yeah.
I'm not sure how... like, spam to a certain degree is natural, and I think it's unavoidable. But like, how much is good and how much...
Yeah, you don't want to create the incentives for
you don't want
too much.
You don't want 90% of the block space to be consumed by spam.
You're paying the fee.
No,
I don't know. Actually, I'm a little bit on the fence on that one too.
But it also prevents, especially like think of it this way: if you have like local fee markets, now if everyone's spamming the same contract, now normal users cannot interact with it because it's all of a sudden becoming expensive.
Yeah.
There's that much opportunity in spamming the market when the transactions have specific deterministic ordering. Just that alone, is enough incentive to spam the market because you've created this, I say random in the sense that the miner can't choose the ordering; it's chosen by virtue of some type of ordering.
The incentive to spam here is to increase your probability of overtaking anyone for given an AD opportunity. So like the more transactions you spam,
Are you basically the motivation is I'm going to spam the network with an identical transaction, ever so slightly different, that attaches to a different transaction ID, with the hope that I get the higher order.
So if I'm 20
Identical transactions.
like let's say different nonces,
I see.
and if one of them gets included, I increase the probability.
You can't do different nonsense though, because
Sorry. Different addresses.
Yeah, like you just change one not situation, one way.
Whatever.
Yeah, one variable. Just
So now I'm incentivized to add as many
to get top of the list. So it's actually not transactions that pay the fee. It's actually a bunch of ones that will get them. So it's a mempool.
They will still
spam.
get they will still pay because you will execute them.
In the case of Slime.
Oh, okay. That's actually
even
better.
in case of Ethereum as well.
Oh yeah, true.
If you don't execute them, then let's bounce.
That's actually better. That's actually better in the sense that you at least pay fees.
You can also pay fees, but like you could pay.
So one question is, you have to somehow try the situation where it's higher than all the fees you're going to pay.
That's why I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced in general that you can solve that. Maybe I think you can decrease it, but I don't
Mitigate it.
I don't think you can eliminate it.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And I just don't know that this is that big of a spam problem.
I think, assuming that you have enough maybe opportunities, I think it's inevitable that
That's right. Maybe I can't contrive the situation where we have that maybe opportunity.
You should just spend time in Solana searching chats or whatever. You'll see how many of these.
But what Jitto did was pretty cool.
No, but just spam the chain with a whole bunch of transactions you know you're going to fail.
That was happening before.
Flash spots?
Yeah, so the way it would work before MEV was introduced, so how it worked is like there were a bunch of price gas options where like two people were competing with one another by paying more than the other one to be included, and then all the rest of the transactions were paid that were included.
So when they were competing, it was like an auction?
Essentially an auction within an auction.
Right, but then in an auction, you only pay the highest bid.
It was an auction in the sense that even said this, like
Probably thought
That was balanced. Oh, okay, that's how different than normal.
And I mean, when you see those graphs where it says 50, 75% failure rate, that's what that is. It's essentially, and they're double spending, basically. But they still make the pay.
So like if you look at
It's double spending, but not in a way that would cause a drop transaction. Not in a way that would cause a drop transaction, but instead of a way that would cause a failure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, when you see
Like a
people
token spend versus a gas price.
Yeah, and that's also why, like, when people post that graph and they say, oh, 75% fail, that's a misnomer.